You're an advocate, clearly, of dialogue. And you mentioned at the beginning of our discussion, and it's in your book, about the importance of dialogue. And one of the areas that you have been engaged in and also trying to advance is having Christians and speaking and sitting down with Muslims and having, if you will, almost cross-religious discussions and opportunities to benefit from the experiences. Develop that a bit. Talk about that, about your ideas in that regard that you have identified in the book and that you are actually acting upon.
Well, I feel like in the West, if you assume that Samuel Huntington's thesis of a clash of civilizations is correct, I feel that in the West we have been cornered into an attitude of defense. We are on the defensive continuous. You're always saying we are not Islamophobes, we are not discriminating, we like you on the one hand. On the other hand, we are using military means and spying methods to deal with jihad and with the violence against the West, against women, etc. What I would like us to do is to go back to the realm of ideas, assume that Muslim individuals are endowed with reason, that if engaged in dialogue, and I mean in proper dialogue where you don't shy away and move around and beat about the bush in the areas where there is a real conflict of values, but really address them, that there is a possibility of changing people's minds. Just last night I was in Philadelphia and it was on the record. A young Muslim woman stands up with a headscarf and she challenges me. She's from Afghanistan and she challenges me. She says, I'm born in Afghanistan and the men in my family were good to me. They sent me to school. I am now in university in the United States and it's because of the men in my family. Ayaan, I dare you to tell me what is it about the Quran that you didn't like? And I gave it to her. I told her, well, it's chapter 4, verse 34, the verse that says, beat your wife. It is chapter 2, verse 222, that gives men permission to rape their wives in marriage. Women from Afghanistan have protested against this. This was reported, I read it in the New York Times, but this was reported in the West. This young woman was sitting there, jotting down those verses. She's going to look them up. She's going to link them. I'm not saying that I've changed her mind or that I've made her into something else that she's not, but I was so inspired and encouraged by her curiosity, by wanting to know what it was that I didn't want. And I see most Muslim people, such as that young woman, wanting to know. There are a group of them, very elite, very privileged, living in the United States. I encounter them in campuses that have these post-scripted narratives that they come with, who are not ready to listen, but are just there to grab the mic and do their thing, which is to defend the image of Islam, but they're not speaking for Islam. They're not speaking for Muslims. They're not speaking for this young woman who wants to know, who wants to learn, for whom learning is a great deal. And I am sure that if Christians were to do the same, if feminists were to do the same, if Enlightenment thinkers were to do the same, that many, many Muslim minds that are now trapped in this radical, born-again Islam, this jihadist form of Islam, would change their minds and adopt new ideas, are open to something else other than following the example of Muhammad.
Are you trying to put together formal dialogues and discussions toward that end? You're clearly speaking to different audiences and targeting some here and there, but in a systematic way. Are you thinking about the organization of these kinds of dialogues, maybe with some of the same people, not just once, but several times? Is that something that's on your agenda?
It is on my agenda, but again, I believe in putting as a priority really the most severe forms of human rights violations. I've started the AHA Foundation, which is a short form for Ayaan Hirsi Ali, but also the Enlightenment AHA. And the AHA Foundation, with a number of American women who said, we don't just want to talk, we want to do something. And I pointed out to my experience in the Netherlands and in Europe, where for a long time these practices of female genital mutilation and forced marriages, honor killings, child brides were going on, and society was looking the other way. And I said, I suspect that something like that might be going on in the United States. And with that foundation, first of all, we want to start by informing the American population that it is here, researching how many, we don't have data exactly to how many women does this happen, and then educating and influencing the American leadership to prevent these things from happening. And then from there, perhaps the young woman I just described, individuals like that will emerge and will, take the debate themselves to a different level. There was another woman in that Philadelphia library, and here's, I think, where dialogue pays off, who was wearing a headscarf, is a practicing Muslim, and said, I do exactly what you do, but I only do it undercover. And I have
You
been...
must have asked her, well, why undercover?
Of course, even though I know it, because a lot of the readers of Infidel were women, and they write to me, and they write to me about the consequences of what they face. They risk being shunned, being vilified, character assassination, being beaten, and sometimes even being killed. So the price that you pay for this transition is very, very, very high. And some of us want to pay that price in our own different way, but we are there. We are there. And I think that right now, the loudest voices that we hear are those people who are saying there's nothing wrong with Islam, it has nothing to do with Islam, or those people who are actively winning hearts and minds of the Muslim community for the jihadi project.